There's a kind of heaviness that lingers in a home, not loud, not obvious, but persistent. You clean, you rearrange, you even burn a little sage, and yet something still feels off. The air isn't quite clear, the mood dips when you enter certain rooms, and despite your best efforts to stay positive or focused, there's a sense that something unseen is quietly working against you. In Feng Shui, we know that not all clutter is equal. Some items simply take up space, but others interfere with energy. And it's not about whether something looks messy or expensive, it's about what it carries. Every object in your home holds a frequency. Some uplift you, some hold memory, and some act like silent drains, pulling at your motivation, your health, even your prosperity. The most dangerous ones aren't the broken things you plan to throw away. They're the ones you think are beautiful, the ones gifted to you by people you don't fully trust. The antiques with charm but no known history. The statues, the pearls, the umbrellas sitting quietly in the corner. They don't speak, but they speak. And once you learn how to listen to the energy they hold, you'll never walk past them the same way again. Today on New Day Mindfulness, we're going to walk through 10 common items you may already have in your home that could be working against your energy field. I'll show you exactly why these objects matter in Feng Shui, how they block qi flow without you realizing it, and what simple choices you can make today to restore clarity and movement in your space. This is not about superstition, it's about energetic common sense. You wouldn't drink from a cracked cup. You wouldn't walk through a room full of smoke and expect to breathe clearly. So why keep objects that quietly disrupt the most intimate corners of your life? Your sleep, your mood, your decisions. Before we dive into the list, I'd be incredibly grateful if you'd support this channel with a quick like, share, or subscribe. New Day Mindfulness is on the journey toward 5,000 subscribers, and with your help, I can keep sharing grounded Feng Shui wisdom with more people who are ready to live with awareness, not just aesthetics. When you engage with this content, you're not just supporting me, you're helping expand this conversation about energy, intention, and alignment into more homes, more hearts, and more healing. Now, let's take a closer look at your shelves, your drawers, and those beautiful things you've always felt meh about, but never questioned. Because it turns out, they might be carrying more than you think. And when you clear the energy they hold, your home starts speaking back to you in a very different tone. Let's begin. Section 1. Objects that mimic life can disrupt energy flow. Objects that resemble life, especially those that mimic the human form, may seem harmless or even charming. But in Feng Shui, they are some of the most energetically disruptive items you can unknowingly bring into a space. Lifelike dolls, realistic figurines, statues with defined facial expressions, or full-body human sculptures all fall into this category. Their impact isn't based on personal taste or visual aesthetics. It's rooted in how energy, or qi, interacts with symbolic form. In Feng Shui, the shape and subject of an object are not superficial details. They influence the flow, containment, and vibration of energy in a room, particularly when the object has features that resemble life. When a figure mirrors the human body, eyes, limbs, expression, it begins to activate a kind of energetic dialogue with the space around it. This dialogue may not be conscious, but it happens subtly and consistently, especially in areas where the human nervous system is most sensitive, such as the bedroom or home office. One of the foundational principles of energy flow in Feng Shui is clarity. Every room should have a defined center of calm, a source of direction, and enough energetic space to allow the qi to move gently but purposefully. When you introduce a human-like figure into a room, especially one that is not alive but has human resemblance, you create a layer of energetic confusion. The room, in a symbolic sense, no longer knows where the real human energy begins and where the artificial form ends. This is particularly true in bedrooms, where qi is supposed to quiet down, become yin, and support the body's deepest repair cycles. If a doll or statue is present, particularly one with strong eye contact or expressive posture, it creates what Feng Shui calls invisible presence. This can keep your subconscious in a low-level state of alertness, preventing full relaxation and deep sleep. Children are especially sensitive to this kind of interference. Their energy fields are not as shielded or stabilized as adults, which is why toys or dolls with intense facial detail or staring expressions should never be placed near a child's bed or in the direction they sleep facing. It's not just about bedtime or sleep quality. In a workspace, lifelike figures can clutter mental clarity, whether it's a bust on a bookshelf or a realistic figurine on a desk. These forms can subtly interfere with focus and decision-making. The energy field of the room becomes split, part of it responding to the living occupant and part of it reacting to the symbolic figure. The result is often a sense of cognitive fatigue, emotional fog, or a room that just feels off, even when everything looks fine on the surface. Some people report never feeling fully alone or rested in such rooms, as if they're always being watched or accompanied, even though nothing is obviously wrong. That's just not imagination, it's energetic dissonance. Another layer of concern arises when the origin of the item is unknown. Many people collect dolls, statues, or figurines from markets, antique shops, or foreign travel, drawn to their craftsmanship or exotic beauty. But in Feng Shui, the history of an object matters as much as its appearance. If a figure came from a home filled with emotional conflict, illness, or hardship, that energetic residue can remain embedded in its form. And because human-shaped items act like energetic antennas, they tend to amplify whatever vibration they have absorbed, good or bad. Bringing such an item into your home without cleansing or intention can unknowingly invite someone else's unresolved story into your space. You may begin to experience unexplainable irritability, difficulty focusing, or even friction in relationships without realizing the object's energetic signature is subtly influencing the field. The risk is not that these objects are evil or haunted. That's sensationalism. The real issue is interference, energetic confusion, a breakdown in spatial clarity. Think of it this way. Would you leave bright lights on all night in a room you're trying to sleep in? No, because your body needs darkness to produce melatonin and calm the nervous system. Human-like figures are similar. Even when physically still, they emit symbolic light, meaning, narrative, and attention, and that creates ongoing stimulation in a space that's meant to rest. They don't let the room go dark. They hold presence. And in Feng Shui, presence should be intentional, not accidental. For those who truly love these items and don't wish to part with them, it's not always necessary to remove them, but their placement must be strategic. Never place human-like figures in bedrooms, especially facing the bed. Avoid storing them in the southeast, wealth, or northeast, knowledge corners of the home, as these areas influence clarity, decision-making, and long-term growth. If you keep them, house them in display cabinets with doors, ideally in common spaces like hallways or living rooms where energy is meant to be active and moving. Cleanse them periodically with sound, incense, or sunlight to clear energetic buildup. And if you ever receive one as a gift, pay attention to how your space feels in the days after introducing it. If sleep becomes restless, moods dip, or the room feels heavy despite good lighting and design, consider moving the object out temporarily and noticing the shift. Your body will often register subtle disharmony before your mind can articulate it. In the end, Feng Shui isn't about rules, it's about response. If an object draws your attention every time you enter a room, asks for your energy without returning anything nourishing, or simply doesn't sit comfortably in your awareness, it's already affecting your space. That's the signal. You don't need to fear these figures, but you do need to recognize their presence. In the symbolic language of energy, form is function. And figures that resemble life, especially without spirit, deserve thoughtful placement or respectful removal. Your space should support your clarity, not challenge it. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do for your energy is to simply let your environment go quiet again. That's where healing begins. That's where flow returns. And that's when your home starts feeling like home again. Section 2. Objects that absorb emotional residue. Softness doesn't always mean safety. In Feng Shui, some of the most energetically volatile items in a home are not sharp, heavy, or visibly broken, but soft, intimate, and deceptively comforting. They're the objects that have absorbed your or someone else's deepest emotional states without protest. Pillows that held tears during long nights, handkerchiefs used in moments of loss, umbrellas handed down from grandparents after funerals. These items aren't just things you touch. They are things that touch you back. And when brought into a space without awareness, they can continue to release unresolved emotions into your energetic field long after their visible use is over. Let's start with pillows. In the physical world, a pillow is a place to rest your head, decompress your thoughts, and prepare your nervous system for repair. But in the energetic world, your pillow is where your subconscious lands. The head is the crown of the body, not just in anatomy, but in energy. It's where thoughts, dreams, anxieties, memories, and intentions collide. In Feng Shui, the head represents the control tower of Qi. So anything your head rests on becomes a receiver of that energetic information. If that pillow is new, well cared for, and energetically clean, it acts as a support structure, almost like an extension of your own self-trust. But if the pillow is secondhand, inherited, or connected to a difficult phase in your life, it may still be imprinted with the emotional residue of confusion, sadness, or even grief. The issue is not just comfort, it's accumulation. Over time, pillows hold the psychic debris of the people who use them, especially if no intentional clearing was done. They absorb nightmares, late-night worries, whispered arguments, and the heavy silence of unresolved thoughts. They may look clean, but energetically, they can become congested, quietly disorienting your rest even when everything else in the room seems peaceful. This is particularly important when you inherit pillows from family members or take them from hotels, friends, or past partners. Every time you sleep on a surface, your energy partially settles into it. That's why in Feng Shui, we never recommend used bedding, especially if the emotional context of the previous owner was challenging. If they suffered from illness, heartbreak, or loss, that story lingers. Your body may sleep on it, but your spirit won't. You might find yourself waking up tired even after long hours of rest. You may feel irritable for no reason. You may dream of themes that don't belong to you. These aren't random experiences. They are signs of Qi conflict. Your present energy field clashing with the unresolved frequencies embedded in the materials closest to you. Handkerchiefs carry a similarly misunderstood weight. Though small and unassuming, they're symbolically loaded in both Eastern and Western traditions. In many cultures, they've been exchanged during partings, used in funerals, or kept by lovers during separations. They're designed to catch tears, and tears are not neutral. They are emotional releases. When you receive or reuse a handkerchief, especially one that belonged to someone else, you're taking on a thread of their emotional imprint. And because these items are rarely washed with spiritual care, only physically laundered, they retain the vibration of grief, longing, or sadness. Gifting a handkerchief to someone is seen in many Feng Shui traditions as a symbolic gesture of farewell, not connection. It may unintentionally signal an emotional departure, even if given with kindness. That's why handkerchiefs, while functional, are never ideal gifts in romantic relationships or during transitional phases of life. They hold the energy of goodbye, of letting go, of stored sadness. Keeping one from a loved one who passed, or holding on to a gifted one from a past relationship may seem sentimental, but energetically, it could be preventing closure. Umbrellas bring another dimension of energetic symbolism. They are tools of separation, designed to shield, block, and divert. In practical use, they protect from rain and sun, but symbolically they represent division, particularly in the energetic language of Feng Shui. Giving an umbrella as a gift is associated with parting or the blocking of natural flow. In many Asian traditions, umbrellas are never exchanged between close friends or romantic partners, especially not during moments of new beginnings like weddings, housewarmings, or business launches. Their linguistic and symbolic meaning implies spreading apart or blocking blessing. Inherited umbrellas, especially those from funerals or hospital visits, often carry a dense yin energy, the energy of mourning, stillness, and spiritual isolation. Keeping them in the entryway of your home, where new energy is meant to flow in, can act as a subconscious barrier. They don't just block weather, they block momentum. What unites these three objects, pillows, handkerchiefs, and umbrellas, is their ability to collect and store emotional residue without your awareness. They don't vibrate loudly, they don't break the room visually, but they emit low-level persistent signals that influence your emotional body. And unless you are extremely energy sensitive or spiritually practiced, you may not notice the source of discomfort. You'll just know that something feels off, that a room doesn't feel clear, that a night's rest never feels truly restful, that your emotions feel heavier than they should in a space that looks tidy, that your focus drifts, or that emotional agitation rises for no reason at all. In Feng Shui, we don't blame objects, but we do listen to them. And items that come in close contact with the body, especially around the head or the heart, deserve special attention. This doesn't mean you have to throw everything away. It means you have to assess with care. Where did this come from? Who used it last? What emotion was most often present when this object was in use? Has it been energetically cleared or just physically cleaned? Does it uplift me or does it carry a story I no longer want to live inside? For pillows, replacement is often the best choice, especially if they belong to someone who struggled emotionally. If you cannot replace them, place them in direct sunlight regularly. Use essential oils with bright yang energy, like lemon or rosemary, and consider adding a layer of natural crystal energy nearby, selenite or clear quartz, for purification. For handkerchiefs, keep them stored in memory boxes rather than in drawers used for current items. If gifted and emotionally unresolved, consider a simple release ritual, thanking the item, wrapping it in red cloth, and returning it to the earth or fire. For umbrellas, store them away from the main door and out of wealth or relationship sectors. Never gift them during important beginnings, and avoid keeping broken or rarely used ones altogether. Your home is not just walls and furniture. It is an energetic being, and like any living organism, it responds to what it's given. When you allow unresolved emotions to sit silently in the softest corners of your space, you welcome emotional confusion, tiredness, and slowed ki. But when you clear those subtle blocks, when you say yes only to objects that hold vitality, not residue, your home becomes a place where energy doesn't just sit, it moves. And where you don't just live, you restore. Because in Feng Shui, every item either returns your energy or holds it hostage. And your emotional well-being depends on knowing which is doing what. Section 3, the invisible weight of beautiful burdens. Beauty is not neutral. In Feng Shui, some of the most energetically destabilizing items are not broken, old, or discarded. They're admired, expensive, and thoughtfully displayed. But harmony in a space doesn't come from cost or craftsmanship. It comes from alignment. And a beautiful object that carries unresolved symbolism or sits in the wrong place at the wrong time can quietly disturb the flow of energy in your home without ever looking out of place. Opals, pearls, and deity statues are perfect examples. All are considered aesthetically valuable. All carry spiritual and cultural meaning. And all, when misunderstood, can introduce imbalances that affect clarity, stability, and personal power. Opals are mesmerizing stones. They refract light, shimmer with iridescence, and are often thought of as rare and magical. But in many ancient and modern traditions, opals are referred to as stones of sorrow. Their color shifts, unpredictable patterns, and intense reflectivity are seen not as joyful variety, but as emotional volatility. In Feng Shui, opals belong to the water element, a force tied to mystery, depth, and introspection. Water is not inherently negative, but in excess, it drowns fire energy, the energy of confidence, decision-making, and personal vitality. Placing opals in the bedroom, office, or spaces where clarity and grounded direction are needed can dampen qi and increase emotional ambiguity. People often report feeling drained, indecisive, or emotionally overwhelmed in rooms that feature too many opals or water-heavy stones. The beauty of the stone does not protect against its imbalance. If anything, it masks it, drawing your attention while diffusing your will. Pearls share a similar tension. They symbolize elegance, grace, and refinement. But energetically, pearls are also expressions of water energy, soft, fluid, and historically associated with mourning in many Asian cultures. They are created from irritation, grown over time in isolation, and carry a quiet narrative of internal pressure. In Feng Shui, pearls are used cautiously. Wearing them daily or placing them around the house, especially near the heart or in relationship areas, can begin to suppress yang energy, the force of boldness and forward motion. For people going through loss or grief, pearls may offer emotional containment. But for those trying to build strength, clarity, or financial momentum, they can hold back fire just enough to keep things quietly stagnant. A pearl necklace passed down through generations may feel sacred, but unless cleared, it may also carry generational sorrow, particularly from women who lived under suppression or emotional silencing. Then there are deity statues, perhaps the most misunderstood items in home decor. Many households place Buddhas, Kuan Yin statues, or other spiritual figures on shelves, entry tables, or coffee corners without truly considering what they're introducing into the energy field of the home. In Feng Shui, these are not decorations. They are symbolic portals. They represent specific frequencies, specific functions, and specific invitations to sacred energy. When treated with reverence, properly positioned, and aligned with the values of the home, deity statues can elevate a space dramatically, offering protection, compassion, or wisdom. But when gifted without consent, when placed randomly among clutter, or when housed near distractions like electronics, they introduce spiritual tension. The energy of sacredness is incompatible with disarray. Just as a temple requires stillness, so too does a statue that carries spiritual charge. Placing a Buddha statue on a cluttered bookshelf next to charging cables and expired receipts is not only disrespectful, it dilutes the qi of the entire corner. The issue is not belief, it's mismatch. If a deity's energy is present, the space around it must match that frequency, or the energy begins to destabilize. Another mistake is accepting sacred statues as gifts from people who don't understand the spiritual implications. A Kuan Yin gifted casually may have no spiritual anchor. A Ganesh statue bought for good luck may carry no intention of clearing real energetic obstacles. In those cases, the statue becomes an echo, an empty shell of spiritual potential without direction. And because spiritual energy, when invited without commitment, tends to stir what's unresolved, many people report feeling increased emotional turbulence after bringing in these objects. Not because the statue is cursed or negative, but because it calls the space to rise into alignment. And if the space or the person isn't ready, friction results. In Feng Shui, we always return to this idea. Symbolic weight matters more than the visual appeal. You can fill your home with stunning objects, but if their energy clashes with your current needs or awareness, they become burdens instead of blessings. And the worst kind of burdens are the ones you never question, because they look too lovely to doubt. So how do you work with these items intentionally? Opals should be used sparingly and placed in yin spaces only, areas of reflection, journaling, or meditation. Keep them away from your office desk or your bedside table unless you are in a season of emotional integration and rest. Pearls, if inherited, should be cleansed in moonlight and wrapped in red silk when stored. They are best worn during gentle social events, not during times when you need to speak powerfully, negotiate, or launch new ventures. And deity statues must be treated as sacred. Always place them on a raised surface, never directly on the floor. The ideal spot is in a clean, quiet location, preferably facing a window or open space. Avoid placing them in bathrooms, bedrooms, or directly across from kitchen, stoves, or screens. Clean them regularly with incense smoke, soft cloth, and intentional prayer or silence. Above all, make sure these objects match you. Don't display a deity you don't understand. Don't keep pearls from a lineage of suffering unless you have transformed the energy through ritual or compassion. Don't bring in stones for their sparkle if you're not ready for their emotional depth. Beautiful doesn't always mean good. In Feng Shui, beauty is only a gift when it is aligned. Otherwise, it becomes invisible weight, subtle but heavy, silent but shaping everything. When in doubt, let your body speak. If you feel inexplicably tired around an object, if your thoughts scatter, if your sleep is restless or your emotional tone dips without clear cause, look again. You may be hosting something that no longer supports you. Let beauty serve you, not distract you. Let sacredness belong where it is honored. And let your space reflect the kind of calm, empowered, intentional life you're actually building, not just the kind that it photographs well. When your home becomes a mirror of alignment, not performance, energy flows cleanly, and beauty becomes not a burden, but a blessing. Section 4. Items that trap and compress energy. In Feng Shui, energy must move. That is the single non-negotiable law of balance. Energy that is stuck, compressed, or improperly held begins to distort the space around it. It creates stagnation, emotional heaviness, unclear thought patterns, and physical fatigue. While most people understand this when it comes to cluttered drawers or overflowing closets, what often gets missed are the objects that compress energy symbolically. Items that aren't messy, but silently congested. These include seemingly innocent things like used hats, gifts wrapped in black or white packaging, and inherited items from the deceased. They don't clutter your space visually, but they trap energy in a way that causes energetic misalignment and imbalance over time. The weight isn't in how much they take up, it's in what they don't let go. Let's begin with hats. In Feng Shui, the head is the command center of your personal ki. It governs clarity, perception, leadership, and decision-making. Wearing something on the head, especially over time, leaves an imprint of the person's mental, spiritual, and emotional state. A hat is more than an accessory. It absorbs not only physical oils and scent, but also the mental signature of whoever wore it. That's why used hats are energetically sensitive. Whether it's a hand-me-down from a loved one or a stylish vintage find from a second-hand store, a used hat carries the blueprint of its previous wearer's headspace. Their worries, ambitions, confusion, or personal conflicts may linger invisibly in the lining. Bringing such an object into your home without any form of energetic cleansing is like inviting their unresolved narrative into your own field of thought. You might not consciously notice the interference, but the brain feels it. You may experience more indecision, mental clutter, or emotional fogginess, especially if the hat is stored near your bed, desk, or anywhere you need focused thought. Now consider the symbolic message of hats that are white, gray, or soft black. Colors often associated with mourning, finality, or ancestral qi. In many Asian cultures, white is the color of death, not purity. A white hat worn to a funeral and later kept in storage can unintentionally extend the energy of that grieving period into the present moment, even if years have passed. This is particularly true when such items are placed in active sectors of the home, such as the Northeast, wisdom and knowledge, Southeast, wealth and growth, or Center, health. You may be living a vibrant life, but a lingering item near your door or closet can symbolically suggest that part of your home and part of you is still holding on to the energy of finality, heaviness, or loss. Next, we move to black and white gift boxes or packaging. These colors may seem minimalist and modern, but culturally, they carry distinct energetic codes. In Feng Shui, black represents the deep yin of stillness and the unknown. White symbolizes spiritual closure or transition. Together, black and white are rarely used for celebration or abundance. Instead, they are associated with funerals, separation, and ancestral transitions. When someone gives you a gift in black and white wrapping, especially without red, gold, or other balancing colors, it can introduce the symbolic vibration of stagnation, quiet mourning, or energetic endings. The issue isn't the gift inside, it's the container. You are effectively introducing energy that is sealed, frozen, and non-circulating into your space. If the object remains wrapped or boxed in that combination of colors and is stored in areas related to movement, such as your entryway, career corner, or relationship sector, it can create a subtle resistance to forward momentum. Things feel stuck, even when they appear visually organized. You might work hard but not feel progress. You might invest energy but receive little in return. And unless you understand that the qi is being blocked symbolically through this packaging, you'll continue trying harder instead of clearing smarter. Finally, we arrive at the most energetically charged category: items that once belonged to the deceased. This includes personal objects like jewelry, journals, hats, scarves, tools, or framed portraits. These pieces may hold deep sentimental value, but they also hold residual qi from the life, the illness, and the passing of the person who once used them. In Feng Shui, death does not mean evil, but it does mean yin. And yin, when dominant in a home, especially without intentional balance, creates stagnation, melancholy, and sleep disruption. Items from the deceased require two things: reverence and context. If they are kept in a shrine, an ancestral altar, or a clearly intentional space of memory, they can become anchors of peace and continuity. But when stored casually in drawers, closets, under beds, they leak. Their energy, quiet but profound, seeps into the emotional fabric of the home. And often, the inhabitants begin to feel inexplicably stuck in the past, unable to make bold decisions or move forward emotionally, financially, or relationally. It's not superstition, it's energetic memory without energetic boundaries. Many people believe they're honoring loved ones by keeping their belongings close. But in Feng Shui, honoring the dead means giving them their own space. not mixing their frequency with the living's daily activity. A bracelet worn by someone in their final year of life carries more than their fashion. It carries their physical decline, their inner transitions, and their final emotions. Keeping that item in your bedroom or next to your personal altar without any energetic shielding can blur the line between your chi and theirs. You may feel ungrounded, as if part of you is somewhere else. You may feel sadness that isn't fully yours. Or you may simply lose the emotional appetite for the next chapter of your life, even though you want to move forward. So what's the practical remedy for items that trap and compress energy? Let's begin with hats. If you inherit or purchase one secondhand, always cleanse it before storing or wearing. Expose it to morning sunlight for at least 3 hours. Run sandalwood or sage smoke through the inside and outer crown. If it belonged to someone who has passed, consider wrapping it in red cloth and storing it with a prayer for transition and release. Do not keep these in bedrooms or near the workspace unless you are sure the energy is neutral or revitalized. For black and white wrap gifts, re-wrap them before placing in the home. Use red, gold, green, or soft earth tones to invite abundance and circulation. If the original packaging feels heavy or solemn, remove it completely. Even beautiful designer boxes in this color scheme can act as subtle energetic blocks, particularly if they are sealed and never opened. If the item itself is meaningful, give it the respect of clean presentation. Let the wrapping match the life you are living, not the tension it arrived with. As for items from the deceased, create clear lines. Choose one place in your home where you honor your ancestors or loved ones with intention. Do not scatter their items across living areas, bedroom drawers, or storage bins. If the item is small, like jewelry, store it in a box of wood or ceramic, not metal or plastic. Clean it gently, speak to it, acknowledge the life it belonged to and your choice to keep it. Most importantly, make a spiritual contract that the item is held in memory, not in mourning. That you are living forward, not stuck in preservation. In all of this, remember, Feng Shui does not label objects as good or bad. It asks, what is this doing to the movement of energy? What is it suppressing or releasing? What story does it carry, and do you still want that story inside your life? When you remove items that compress energy, you aren't rejecting the past. You're clarifying the present. You're making room for breath, for circulation, for momentum. And that is the true purpose of energetic hygiene. Not perfection, not minimalism, but movement. When chi flows, so does clarity, so does vitality, and so does life. Let your space breathe, and it will return the favor. Let your home carry only what moves you forward, not what holds you in pause. Because even beautiful, quiet objects can weigh more than you realize. And release always feels lighter. Always. Section 5. Antiques. Energy echoes from lives you never lived. Antiques are a fascinating category in Feng Shui. Their beauty and historical significance often make them prized possessions, but they come with hidden layers that many overlook. In Feng Shui, every object has a story. And while some stories are uplifting and carry positive energy, others can hold shadows, unresolved emotions, trauma, or disturbances that may have been tied to the object's original owner. These energies can subtly influence the space where the item is placed, often without the owner ever realizing it. The term energy echoes comes into play when we talk about antiques. Objects that have been passed through generations, used by different people, or even brought from distant places, carry the vibrations of all the lives they've touched. And depending on what those lives entailed, struggles, wars, personal griefs, these energetic imprints can linger in the object long after its original purpose has ended. The reason why antiques can hold these energies is tied to the materials they are made from, especially natural materials like wood, metal, and fabric. These materials have an inherent ability to absorb and store energy. Just like the body stores emotional and physical trauma, objects can remember the energy of their past. Wood, for example, is particularly sensitive in this way. It's alive, constantly absorbing and releasing energy from its environment. This quality makes it perfect for crafting, but it also makes it susceptible to carrying the emotional imprints of its owner. Metal, too, is a material known for storing energy. It's dense and conducts vibrations easily, which means any past emotional charge tied to the metal, whether positive or negative, could be absorbed and carried with the item for generations. Now imagine bringing an antique into your home, one that once belonged to someone who experienced instability or hardship. Maybe it was a family heirloom passed down through generations of survivors, or a vintage piece from a distant place carrying the unseen weight of historical conflicts. If that antique was kept in a home filled with stress, financial struggle, or emotional conflict, it could bring a subtle but persistent energetic residue into your own space. You may find yourself feeling uneasy around it, unsettled, or even drained of energy, even though the object appears beautiful or harmless on the surface. This is the energy echo. It's not the object's fault, it's simply carrying the memory of its past. The challenge with antiques lies in their age and the unknowns they carry. When an antique is handed down without much context, perhaps inherited from a distant relative or purchased at an antique shop, there's no way of knowing what the object has witnessed or absorbed in its lifetime. It may have been in homes filled with sorrow, loss, or financial ruin. It could have been a source of comfort to someone who was suffering, but it may also have held emotional trauma, instability, or confusion. Over time, these energetic imprints build up, creating a subtle undercurrent of disharmony that you may not consciously recognize but feel nonetheless. In Feng Shui, we talk about the importance of intention in creating balance and alignment within a space. If an object is placed in your home without thoughtful consideration, it can disrupt that balance. Antiques with unknown or traumatic origins should not be placed in the heart of your home or in areas that are meant to promote growth and positive energy. For example, the southeast corner of your home is associated with wealth, prosperity, and abundance. Placing an antique with unclear origins or negative emotional energy in this area could block the flow of prosperity. Similarly, placing an antique near the bedroom where you sleep could interfere with your personal energy field and affect your rest, causing fatigue, stress, or nightmares. So, what can you do if you already have an antique in your space that might carry unwanted energy? The first step is to acknowledge it. The act of awareness itself is a powerful tool in Feng Shui. Recognize that the object may not be simply a beautiful relic. It could be holding something that needs to be cleared. Acknowledge that this object may be carrying a piece of someone else's history, one that you don't need to carry into your future. Next, cleanse the object. Physical cleansing is important, but energetic cleansing is just as essential. Use methods that honor the item's history and material. For wooden antiques, expose them to sunlight to naturally clear their energy. Sunlight is a purifying force and can help dissipate the stagnant energy that might be stored in the wood. For metal antiques, consider using a gentle incense like sage, palo santo, or sandalwood. Incense is believed to cleanse and reset the energy of objects, helping to release any unwanted residue. Another method is to place the antique in a salt circle overnight, a practice that absorbs negative energy and leaves the object renewed. You can also use sounds such as ringing a bell or playing soft chimes to clear the energy around the object. When it comes to placement, be mindful of where you keep the antique. Avoid putting it in spaces that promote financial or personal growth, such as the southeast corner, wealth, or the northeast, knowledge. Instead, place it in more neutral spaces such as hallways, entryways, or the living room. These areas are ideal for antiques because they serve as transition zones in the home. They are not directly tied to one specific aspect of your life, allowing the object to exist without conflicting with your energy flow. Another important aspect to consider is whether the antique aligns with your current life phase. If it belongs to a time or era that no longer resonates with you, consider whether it's worth keeping. Feng Shui is about aligning your space with your present energy, not clinging to the past. If the item no longer fits the person you are becoming, it may be time to let it go. Don't be afraid to part with items that carry a story you no longer want to live within. Letting go is not an act of disrespect, it's an act of self-care and intention. It's about choosing the energy that aligns with the life you are building now. Finally, remember that just because something is old or antique does not make it inherently valuable, energetically or otherwise. Its value lies in the energy it carries and how it aligns with the flow of your home. Don't hold on to objects for the sake of tradition or sentimentality if they no longer support the energetic goals you are working toward. Letting go of an antique that carries negative energy is not about abandoning history. It's about creating space for new positive energy to enter your life. When you honor the energy of your home by choosing objects that align with your current phase, you create a space that supports clarity, prosperity, and personal growth. In Feng Shui, everything is interconnected. The objects you choose to surround yourself with either nourish or deplete your energy. Antiques, with their rich history and subtle presence, are no exception. By recognizing the energetic significance of these items, cleansing them appropriately, and ensuring their placement aligns with your life's current direction, you can create a space that fosters both harmony and growth. Let the past be respected, but let it not stand in the way of the future you are building. When you make these choices, you clear the path for a flow of energy that supports the highest potential of your life. And that is the true power of Feng Shui. This was never about fearing your furniture or seeing ghosts in old gifts. It's about waking up, about recognizing that your home has never been silent. It speaks to you every day, not through sound, but through subtle sensation, through that feeling of relief when you walk into one room and that unexplained heaviness in another, through the restless sleep that comes without reason, through the clutter you keep reorganizing but never quite feel free from. Feng Shui doesn't ask you to believe in magic, it asks you to pay attention. Because in every drawer, every shelf, every item you've said, "I'll deal with it later," there's energy, and that energy either moves you forward or holds you still. Some of the objects around you were chosen by your past self. Some were inherited, others gifted. And while they may carry beauty, what matters more is the vibration they release each day into your life. Not all weight is visible. Some burdens hang in the air. Some hide in the soft corners of old fabrics, in the sealed boxes you never open, in the antiques that echo lives you never lived. This isn't about aesthetics, it's about alignment, about asking, does this still match the person I'm becoming? Energy may be invisible, but its effects are not. So I offer you a simple but powerful challenge. Walk through your home today, just once, not to clean, but to notice. Let your body lead. Choose one item that feels emotionally outdated, one object that no longer reflects your truth, and ask yourself honestly, why is this still here? Then either release it with intention or cleanse it with care. And watch quietly how your space shifts. Sometimes a single act of awareness can restore movement to everything that felt stuck. Perhaps you have already felt this. Perhaps you're remembering now that there's a gift you never fully accepted, a keepsake that never fully felt like yours. If today's video helped you see your space differently, if it helped you sense the quiet conversation between your home and your well-being, I warmly invite you to share your experience in the comments below. What object came to mind while watching? What did your intuition already know, long before we named it here together? And if this video brought you clarity, I would be honored if you'd support this channel with a like, a share, or a subscription to New Day Mindfulness. We are steadily walking toward our goal of 5,000 subscribers. And with your support, I can continue creating videos that go beyond decor and speak to the soul of space itself. When you support this channel, you help others rediscover the stillness, clarity, and flow they deserve in their own homes. So thank you for watching, for reflecting, and for choosing to live with greater energetic integrity. May your home become not just a container for your life, but a collaborator in your growth. May it rise to meet your clarity, and may everything that no longer serves you, gracefully and without resistance, begin to fall away.